Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nacho Tuesday. Today, I have Doug Walner from Align, and we're happy to hear more about his company and his lengthy history as an entrepreneur and an executive. Also, found out today that he's a big fan of history, so he's gonna have a lot of knowledge that he could probably drop on us today, and we're really pleased to have him.
Uh, I'm going to stay away from teaching history today, but I'll certainly answer any questions you have for me about the business. And
Great, we'll have a follow up on that one then.
sure.
Could you tell us more about Align and what you guys do in a quick 30-second elevator pitch?
Yeah. So just really quick, Align is essentially helps companies track and measure success against their annual goals. If you want to sort of think about it simply, it allows you to manage and assign the key priorities and things that you need to get done in your organization to everybody, and sort of do it in a way that's structured so that if you're trying to achieve a goal, it's everything. Everybody is taking on priorities to execute against that goal. So there's alignment, if you will. That's how we got our name. But the software helps keep focus in the organization by providing, different tools that promote good communication, good meeting cadences. We have meeting tools, and really it allows you to sort of create rhythms in your business so that your meetings are focused on the right things, and it just you're getting the right work done.
Yeah, I've seen many companies. The biggest problem that they have with their plans is that they have an idea of what they want, but they don't have a way. They don't have an understanding of how to get there and
Yeah.
ways to measure if they're going in the right direction or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. It's all about. It's not just about getting the plan done. How many times have you heard that people say, "Hey, I've got this great plan. We spent 3 days developing a strategic plan for the year, and I put it in my drawer, and we haven't really looked at it since." The key is, all right. Well, what do you do when the plan is done, and how do you track and measure what you actually want to get done? And I think that's where we're good on the planning stage with Align, and we allow you to capture that. But ultimately, it's how do you figure out how to break that down and execute against that throughout the year. And that's what our tool allows you to do. It allows you to sort of set that up, assign the workout, break it off in chunks, and sort of figure out how to put good measurement behind each one of those priorities. And it actually gives you sort of a visual expression of how your business is doing against the execution portion of your business, right? You can look at the financials in QuickBooks, and that tells you how you're doing with nice charts and graphs on the financials. But how are you doing on the actual execution of getting the work done? That's what we do.
Yeah, that's a big proponent. That's a big issue there. A lot of companies look at it just from the 30,000-foot level, but they're afraid to go into the weeds and really understand all the different mechanics that really move the business along and allow you to achieve those big 30,000-foot goals that we want.
Yeah, well, if you look at sort of it, I mean, at the end of the day, we're in the business of performance management, but the old way of doing performance management was the manager sitting down and saying, "Hey, here's what I expect of you for this quarter or the year," and then they get to the end of the quarter and they'd have some sort of subjective review of how the employee did against the things they expected of him, but there wasn't a lot of documentation, there wasn't a lot of measurement. And I think what our software allows you to do is we call it continuous performance management, right? We allow you to document what it is, put a KPI or a measurement tool behind it, and visualize it. And throughout the quarter, you're seeing how people are actually performing against that.
Yeah, a lot of people, they'll do the evaluation at the end of the quarter and have no idea how they got there.
Yeah. It takes the subjectivity of employee reviews out. You have actual data now to sort of do an objective review on the key things that employee needed to do.
Yep. And where do you see most businesses really fail on their plan to get to these strategic goals that they might have?
I mean, I think you alluded to this in the beginning. It's really just the execution piece, staying focused, and I think they'll develop the plan, but they don't develop the depth in the plan that says, all right. And I think for customers, it's probably easier to say, all right, here are the annual goals. But if these are the annual goals, let's break this down into quarters and say, all right, what are the 5 or 6 things we're going to do as a company, and then how do we get everybody focused around those 5 or 6 what we call important priorities, company priorities, and then break that down from there. And then underneath each one of those, who's doing what part of that and identifying that work. We allow you to sort of break that down, assign it out, put an owner on it, An owner means somebody's accountable for at least making sure it gets done and reporting on it. And if there are other people who have priorities that fall underneath that priority, they're making sure that everybody else is sort of reporting in on that. And it's really just putting in a little bit of business methodology into your business, full structure and process around execution and getting the work done.
That sounds like a great leadership lesson there. So over the years, what are some essential leadership lessons that you've learned? Aside from just setting up a good strategic plan and putting those plans into motion, what have you seen as some good steps that somebody could take to becoming a good leader?
It's a good question. People are going to have all kinds of different answers to that. Look, for me, it's just being authentic, authentic with your team, authentic with who you are. I have this view. I mean, obviously a big part of what we do and what we promote to our customers is starting inside the organization, starting with core values and sort of deciding, what the core values of the business are going to be very early on, and sort of making sure that you stay true to your core values. Yeah. To me, that is everything. That sort of sets the tone, and you have to kind of live your core values. For me, it is just being authentic with my team, and we have a core value, which is sort of one of the core principles I've had in business, which is just getting shit done at the end of the day. That's one of our core values. You'll find it on our website. It's the most important thing. It's about the execution. It's about not talking about things and just going and getting shit done on a regular basis. And if you do it yourself, if you practice it, if you show it as a leader, your employees see it. And I think that's living the core values as you lay it out for the company is really, really important from my perspective, and I think from a leadership perspective.
So from your perspective, you'd rather have somebody go out and try something, and even if they fail at it, at least
learn. Yeah. Look, hopefully we've worked out, here's the priority, find a good way to execute that priority. If you fail, find another way, right? But yeah, go try it. Go get something done. You're better off. You're going to learn doing that for sure.
And so a key component of that, I would imagine, myself being a founder as well, and being in leadership positions within startups, your core team that you start with is very important. And so going out and hiring the right talent from the beginning, culture is a big part of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's two ways. You attract the right people into your company, and then they're also attracted. Yeah, they're attracted to the company, and then you're also able to fine tune and pick the people that really match your company culture. I guess what do you look for when you're interviewing people, if you're looking to find if there's a good company culture fit?
I mentioned the authenticity. I think just, I'm part of every interview here at Align. At least for now I am. It's really important that I'm the last interview that somebody goes through. We really put people through the paces in terms of meeting multiple members of the team. Like I feel that it's really important to get buy-in from members of the team, not just the hiring manager and me, but just, colleagues and whatnot. So you'll do 4 or 5 interviews before you get hired here. But it's that authenticity, and that's what I'm looking for when they get to me. I let the hiring manager vet the skills. I let the hiring manager dig in on the technical aspects of the job and do they meet the requirements. But when it gets to me, it's about that authenticity, and does the person sort of have the integrity that we hold as another one of our core values, which we call do the right thing. I think that's an important aspect when you're interviewing is actually, if you have core values, sort of as you're going through an interview, ask yourselves the question about the individual and put the core value filter on them and make sure that they meet. You can see them sort of answering in their questions all the core values and hit your core values in that interview. And I think for me, that's one of the things I try to do. I don't worry about the skill set. I hope, I'm relying on the managers, hiring managers to get that stuff done. It's about, are they going to be a good, productive member of the team from a culture perspective?
And I'm also a big proponent of, I believe you could teach people the right skills and they can learn along the way. If they're a smart person, they have that knack for trying to problem solve, and they're authentic, as you say. Typically what I've found in the past is if you could take people that might be raw, they might not meet all the checklist items from a technical perspective, if you will, but you could kind of coach them into the position if they have that drive that you're talking about, that learn.
Yeah, look, you're talking to somebody who ran a company in the assessment space, so in the skills assessment space. So I will tell you that the single best predictor of job success is cognitive ability, right? It's can you learn? It's really at the end of the day, do you have a mind to think, and can you learn? If you can learn, we can teach you the job pretty well. But you have to have two things, and we used to tell our clients is you have to have the can do, but you have to have the will do. You have to have the right personality for it. You have to have the right attributes from on the soft side of things, and so it's the can do and the will do. And if you've got both of those things, you can be taught and you can be trained up to get things done. And I'm a big believer in that, big proponent of that. You've got to have it up here. If you hire smart people, you can teach them what you need them to do.
Yep, yeah, got to have it here and got to have it in the heart too.
Yeah.
So I guess over the years, you mentioned that, currently, you're really busy. You got a lot of, you're a big history buff. You're reading up a lot of that, always trying to understand more. But in the past, what has been some of your favorite books that you've read on leadership principles that other people?
Yeah, probably and this will come as no surprise, but my favorite book that I've read on business is a book by Larry Bossidy called Execution, co-written by Ram Charan. I think it's called something like the discipline of getting things done. I think they were probably soft on the term. It's where I get shit done, right? It's about how organizations sort of get wrapped up in the analysis and analysis paralysis and thinking things through too much. It's just go do, like get things done, execute. That's just been a theme that's run through all the companies I've run, and it's something that I use everywhere I go because I truly believe it. You just got to get work done. You got to get it done, and I think so many people just don't understand that basic concept that it's not about the talking part; it's about the execution part.
Yeah, or they're afraid to execute until they have all the details figured out.
And maybe they're afraid to fail, but failing's, like you said earlier, it's a good thing. You learn from it. If you're smart, you'll figure out new ways to address it. And look, everybody's come up against things they failed, and you just got to keep trying and be resilient.
Yep. Yeah, it's just it's a perspective thing, right? So failure has nothing to do with who you are as a person, right? It's just a part of the learning journey. And if you look at it that way, it's an opportunity to get closer, faster to where you're actually trying to get to.
Yeah, and sometimes you learn something that allows you to pivot in a new way, and you create something new out of it. I think that's where failure just sort of breeds opportunity.
Yeah, and especially for startups, you're never going to have all the answers, right? That's kind of the fun of it as well too. So talking about company culture, it's very important, I think, to find people that like not knowing all the answers, that like that problem solving aspect of startups where it might have 90% of it figured out in the business model and the execution for how to sell the product or service, but it's figuring out that last little bit. I think that attracts a certain type of employee that can really take that business to the next level.
Yeah, agreed.
So talking about failure, have you had any instances of failure in the past? And
yeah, I mean, look, I've had probably plenty throughout.
Point fingers.
Yeah, no, I've probably had plenty. I think I can recall one instance where we were contracting with the big state to provide a whole bunch of sort of services to the citizens of the state, and we had sort of this target date, and I had the brilliant idea of about a year before, like, all right, we're going to build a new platform for this contract, and we had the time, and I was like, all right, we'll build it in 9 months, and we sort of spent the time, and we spec'd out a whole new platform to rework what we were doing, and we got to launch day, and I was literally down in the state. I was there with the client rolling out the services, and this is one of these services where people are actually coming into a physical location to get serviced and get what they needed, and we just blew it. The system just did not work on day one, and it's a complete embarrassment for us. It was one of those days that it was terrible. My team was back in the office just panicking, and I was down there with the client trying to explain, how we were going to resolve the situation. And, I think you just got in those situations, you just got to kind of stay calm and learn. Obviously, you got to have a little salesmanship in that kind of an instance. But we regrouped. We told the client we're going to figure this out. We're going to regroup in a couple of days. We relaunched, and literally like 2 to 3 days later, we relaunched. We figured out what was going on. It was little things that we thought we had tested, and you get burned. And we failed, but we ultimately launched, and we had hiccups along the way. And but the decision ultimately to build this new platform and to take the risk and to do it, it completely changed our business model for us. We launched this client. It became a solution that we leveraged across multiple states very, very quickly. We worked out the kinks quickly. You just got to go do it, right? And that's what we did. We built it. We went and did it. We failed. We regrouped, we did it again, and we just kept learning from it. And then we could do these rollouts faster than any of our competition, and we just started winning more and more business because of it. So yeah, it was a failure, but ultimately you can turn those failures into success.
Yeah, and that's an important point that you brought up about just staying calm in the moment and not jumping to conclusions and giving them an answer you can't give, of course.
Yeah, if you're in a tough situation, I was in a tough situation. I had no real answers, but just stay calm, and they're the customer, and tell them how you're going to solve the problem.
Yeah. They say confidence breeds success. So it's an instance where it comes in, really handy.
Yeah.
Great. So I guess what other challenges have you had with this particular company that you guys have overcome, and what have you learned from that?
Well, I think one of the challenges we face is that I think when we're dealing with a client, one of the things that we're selling, I guess, into the environment that we're selling into is somebody who wants to make change in their business. And it's not necessarily someone who says, hey, I need this specific software. They're saying, I want to make a change. And I think when we market, we're trying to identify people who understand that they're having an issue in their business. They have a pain point that they're trying to solve, whether it's scale or communication, or it's processes, or just they feel like there's complete chaos around it. In many cases we have successful clients where the success is breeding chaos, and they just need to put structure and process around it. And when they reach out to us, there's usually some pain point they're trying to solve like that. And for us, I think the hard thing has been, it's not really about the software, the problem we're trying to solve. It's really about something that the client is trying to change in their business. They know they need to make the change, and they want to make the change, but the change comes with friction, right? So when you make change inside an organization, that ultimately gets pushback from people inside the organization. Say, hey, why are we doing this? Or why are we going to go into this situation where you're going to put metrics on every one of the priorities that I have? That seems like micromanagement to me. It's like, so those are the things that I think we run up against as a company. And I think many of the companies in the space that we compete against have similar issues. You can imagine if you're going to implement OKRs across a 300-person organization, you're starting to hold people accountable. That accountability and that visibility that everybody's going to have through that software tool is going to present some friction. And I think that's one of the things that we run up against. And I think, the things you do in your software and the way you present the data and the way you can sort of tie the front end employees into the process is really critical. And so I think that's one of the challenges that we face with this, is that it's not necessarily the client's reaction to the software, it's the internal reaction to the change that's going on, that we always, and as an outside software organization trying to sell, we have to deal with that and figure out better ways to sort of, launch the product inside these environments.
And I guess you brought up a good point there. Or I guess I have a question, and to kind of tail into that. But what's the best way, I guess, to convince C-level executives or leadership in your company of implementing an OKR program or any sort of strategic initiative like this? It's a relatively big move.
Well, it is, but it's an important move, right? And you should be able to recognize pretty quickly if you're having an issue getting things done in your organization, or if you just have no structure. I mean, I think that's people have this revelation all the time. They're like, that's why they come to us. They're like, I know I need to do something, and I know I'm not good at doing it. What I've read this book on OKRs by Doerr, or I've read this book by Vern Harnish on scaling up. Like, they find something that they read that they connect with, and they say, I want that structure. I want that process. Now, the reality is these are processes that go back to the days of just like MBOs, right? Drucker's MBOs, management by objectives. They're all the same thing, whether it's OKRs, scaling up. They're all based on the principles of management by objectives, that corporate alignment. It really is just putting good business structure in place, business methodology in place, and having processes in place. And so I think it usually comes from somebody having the epiphany, like they need this implemented. And so we usually have a champion inside the person who's calling us to get this done. It's trying to figure out how to message that across and help them message that across the organization that they need to stick to it. You're gonna get a little bit of pushback for sure, but how do you stick to it, and how do you make these what we call just sort of good business habits? How do you make them stick? And anybody who's trying to form a habit knows you just got to kind of keep doing it, repeat it. It will stick, but you got to keep working at it.
Yep. That's a good point. Yeah, habits are hard to break, and new ones are hard to form. So I think I saw a statistic. You have to build a habit at least over 90 days, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So and we recommend to our clients, like, hey, there's lots you can do in your business. Let's start here and do this, right? Let's just write good priorities for your team for the first 90 days, or let's just get into the rhythms and cadences of regular meetings. Like, so do daily huddles, work on daily huddles for the first 30 days, work on and implement weekly huddles after that. So you're just communicate more. It's amazing when you introduce the concept of the daily huddle to a company, like how the managers react to that. They're like, oh man, I'm finding out so much information on a daily basis I didn't know. And it's like it is a little bit of an epiphany that they have, that like they weren't doing this, and then they don't understand how they couldn't do that for so long.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of live in your silos on Slack, your different channels, but
it is. Slack is just I guess I've used Slack. I use it and it can be effective, but it's also just kind of a reflection of the chaos that you already have to some extent. Yeah. It's just going in all these different channels, so having some organization around that, and that's what we try to do with our software. We don't compete with Slack. That's like a daily communication tool, getting messaging tool, getting stuff out to others. But the daily huddle is a structured daily meeting for folks where they can get the important priorities and updates out on those priorities. And that's what we try to do. And we allow you to structure your meeting, structure the agenda, have sections that pull the data into the meeting that you're supposed to be focused on. So either the priorities or the KPIs that you're tracking.
Nice. Yeah, in some ways, we say internally that Slack probably even makes it more chaotic than before it existed. Makes it too easy to communicate. Sometimes, people send messages, just for everything that's hard to track.
Yeah, I love the random strings where I'm in a Slack and I'm like, where did that come from? I don't even understand that. It's like I must have missed some other Slack string on some other channel that people were talking on, but they started here. It's sometimes confusing.
Yeah, I make a habit of grabbing a link to that specific thread if it's like an important task we got to get done. And I put it into a list, and then I start to organize it from there. Otherwise, it just gets lost into the abyss there, I guess.
Yeah, and what you're doing is just adapting and building habits for that work environment you're working in right there. That's what our software is all about. We give you sort of the structure and framework to do all that.
Right. So what would you recommend? We have a lot of entrepreneurs and founders that watch this, watch our Nacho Tuesday webinars. What kind of advice would you give them, especially for an aspiring entrepreneur, to launch a SaaS product?
So the first, a product or launch a business around SaaS, is that?
Let's go with I guess a business around it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I find, I've done a lot of mentoring of entrepreneurs, SaaS and non-SaaS, and it doesn't really matter what business you're in. I think the most important thing that you have to do is really build out a long-term pro forma, a good, minimum 3-year, but 5-year pro forma is what I recommend. And, a lot of people say, well, I'm just building out a budget. Well, a pro forma is not really a budget. A pro forma is it's going to force you to think about your sources of revenue, how that revenue is coming in, what your revenue streams are going to look like. It's going to force you to think about every expense you have in your business. And it's going to force you to do that on a month-by-month basis over that 60 months, let's say. And I think what I find is the most valuable part of that exercise is getting into the granular detail of the expenses, right? Knowing, I'll look at some pro formas from entrepreneurs they give to me. I'm like, well, I see you have these expenses on, software and hardware.
Oh, we know
Where are
all
people?
about it.
Yeah,
We're
I'm
gonna
like,
save more money on
yeah, but
software.
my question is, where are they going to sit?
Yeah.
If you're going to have an office, where are they going to sit, and how much is your office going to cost you? Or what are your systems going to cost? If you're working in now we talk about hybrid. How are you going to outfit them at home? And so, just thinking through these expenses just forces an entrepreneur to sort of build a vision in their head of what their business is going to look like today, next year, and 5 years out. And you really do need to have a vision for what your team looks like, how many employees you're going to have in month 40, how many developers, if it's a SaaS business, how many QA people are you going to have, how many product marketing people, how many marketing folks. So you really got to think through that. And what it does is it helps you build that image in your head of what your company and your vision looks like. And to me, that's the most useful exercise, because what you're then doing is you're leading based on the vision you've built, right? And so now you have somewhere to take these people that you're hiring and bringing along, and you're chasing that vision. And if you don't go through that exercise early on, you haven't built that. I don't know how people can sort of know where they're going.
Yeah, and understanding the business model in general. Like, can you actually
Yeah,
make money?
like
Can you be price competitive with alternatives out there? Will the business model actually work?
right. And does it fall apart in month 40, right? Do the metrics, go in and look at the metrics in the business, the key SaaS metrics at that point based on your model, and make sure you're not upside down on the business at that point.
Yeah.
The pro forma's got to make sense in month 40 like it does in month 1. So.
Yeah. What other obstacles would you tell entrepreneurs to look out for, I guess, when they're building a business?
SaaS specifically, I would say, focus on the pain, not the vitamin. I think that's again, like, I think one of the things that I'm learning here is I talk about solving pains in a business, and we do. But some people see us as a vitamin, right? Some people see us as that's a nice to have. It's like going to the gym. That would be a good thing for me to do personally. I'd get fit and I'd be in better shape, right? But I don't do it. Why don't I do it? But it's because it's a choice of taking that vitamin or not, or going to the gym or not. And I'd say you're going to be better in a pain business for sure. Pain businesses are usually something that people want to spend a lot of money on really quick. And when my next piece of advice is, you're never pricing your product high enough. I think, like, especially for SaaS and depending on how much pain you're solving, or even how much of a vitamin product you are, your product is good. It's worth it. If you believe in what you're doing, don't be so, don't put a low price out there, don't be scared of pricing.
Yeah, it's a reflection of your brand too, right? A lot of times people might want to give away the farm to attract more customers, but
Yeah.
Lowers the perception of the value, perceived value of the product.
Yeah, look, I think I've mentioned to you prior to this, I mentioned that I'm not actually the founder of this business, particular business, and that I took it over. And I think one of the key mistakes that the founders did make in this business early on was they made it a really cheap product. We were $5 per user per month, and it was just a monthly fee. And it's just, in a way, I think people undervalued what the product did because it was so cheap, and I think you do need to be careful in that scenario. I came in and we immediately pushed our prices up, but that can create that perception in the market. You need to be careful with it.
Certainly. I guess we only have 2 more minutes left. What's one thing you'd like potential customers to know about Align, and why they would choose your platform over, say, some of the other options out there?
Sure. Like I mentioned, there's other options out there. Some of the OKR tools are that do similar things, but I think one of the things I see in most of those OKR tools or other methodology tools is that they kind of focus on one thing. Like, and OKRs is a goal. OKR stands for objectives and key results. It's a goal setting framework. Another goal setting framework is something called SMART goals. Another goal setting framework is something called FAST goals. There's kind of goal setting frameworks for whatever you want. You can find something, but ultimately, what I think we do differently at Align is we sort of take a more holistic approach to this, wrapping business methodology around the goal setting framework. You can have a tool that does the goal setting framework stuff, where it identifies what the goals are and measures it. But what we do is we allow you to sort of do the planning and then the execution around those goals. So, setting the goals, figuring out what they are, and then the execution by pulling those goals and priorities into the meeting and making them part of your weekly meeting cadences, focusing on the things that need to get done. So I think we have sort of a more holistic approach to how the goals in your organization get communicated around, how they get planned, how they get executed. And so visualizing all of that. And I think that's what Align does really well. We've just launched some really great new dashboarding tools to pull your KPIs up for the whole team, either on a company dashboard or an individual dashboard, really making it simple and integrated with the other tools inside your organization. So we kind of I think, simplified dashboards for the small to medium sized growing business, to make it easier. So if there's somebody setting up Salesforce reports, I literally can go in and add a KPI card for that report and see it on my dashboard. It makes it real easy for executives and the team to do that.
Well, we're really excited to see you guys grow over the next few years and see all the great features you guys have come out. And hopefully, you could help a couple companies get to that next level by helping them.
Yeah, we've already done it. We're hoping to help a lot more. So
that's great. That's why we're in the business.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I really appreciate the time today. If anybody wants to check it out, we do have it in our marketplace. We do have a 15% off lifetime deal. Line's in the NachoNacho marketplace, the best place to manage, discover, and save on SaaS. Once again, Doug, thank you so much for the time today.
My pleasure.
I know you're busy, but I really respect it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Totally my pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you.